Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talkin Nets, episode 48. Keith McPherson, Hudson, Flynn, and a special guest. None other than Matt Brooks, NBA. Don't forget the
Don't
NBA.
forget it.
You already know Nets Twitter. You guys know this guy. Matt Brooks, Nets Daily, the film study guy. You've probably seen me and Matt do some sportscaster streams. We also were with Brian Egan from the Glue Guys doing some live streams during the pandemic, but they kind of disappeared.
Yeah. We'll get back on it.
Yeah,
we'll get back on it. I'm telling you. Once we get out of this playoff push, we'll be back on it, I think.
we gotta secure the Beyond Meat sponsor, and then we'll come back.
Dude, I had Beyond Meat twice last week. I was like, man, the Nets, their marketing's working on me. I'm just getting subliminally messaged into getting Beyond Meat every day.
I went from not knowing what it was to then realizing Kyrie was involved, then actually buying it in the store, getting Beyond Burgers.
Yeah.
And actually 2 days ago, I went to Dunkin' Donuts and I realized they had a Beyond Meat sausage like patty. So I was like, give me the Beyond Meat sausage, egg, and cheese. Why not?
Beyond Meat, the official fake meat of the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they gotta pay us for coming into the podcast with that ad. That's a free ad. Like,
dude, they gotta pay us. We've been bumping this since like February, March. Like we were way on this.
Beyond Meat has become a part of Nets Twitter. There was like a conspiracy that Kenny Atkinson got fired because he didn't want to go vegan. He wasn't into Beyond Meat. He was staying meat, beef, chicken. He refused to go Beyond Meat, and they're like, we got to get this guy up out of here.
Beyond Meat is the third star of the Brooklyn Nets. Like no trades required.
No trades needed. We have Beyond Meat.
Next year, the logo on the jersey is just going to be the Beyond Meat cow.
Everyone's saying Jared Allen needs to bulk up, get bigger. That's why we got the Beyond Meat sponsorship.
Maybe that's why he won't bulk up. He's eating Beyond Meat every day.
Beyond Meat. Well, beyond the Beyond Meat jokes, we got to intro Matt Brooks. Matt, I actually rather you tell the people where you're from, where you grew up, how you got into basketball, how you landed in Brooklyn, how you picked up covering the Nets. Just, I guess, from the top of your head in a couple minutes, if someone is listening to Talkin Nets episode 48 and they've never heard of you, what would you want them to know about yourself?
From California originally. There's a bunch of people say I'm from Minnesota. I'm from all these places. I'm from
Baltimore.
California. All right. I'm from California. The Minnesota thing came around because that's the first bit of basketball I watched. My dad's from Minnesota, so I watched a whole bunch of KG Timberwolves. That's kind of what birthed the love for basketball. The Timberwolves basketball that happened after that certainly took away that love at certain points, but that's kind of what got me into it. Moved out here about 2 years ago. It was for a variety of things, but I was looking to do something in sports. No ties to the New York teams, nothing at all. Knicks, Nets, didn't have really any ties. Started working for this company, Elite Sports New York, which is still thriving, and I know people that are still there. One of my good friends, Danny Small, is one of their lead editors. So applied to them, got a job there, and basically said, hey, like, I want to write. I've done a little bit of stuff on my own website. Kind of funny. It's like it was film stuff, which is funny. I've just been doing that like the whole time. So I had a couple of like really loose film study type of stuff. And they basically said, hey, like, you have a choice, but we have more room on the Nets side of things. And I was like, you know what? Sure. I'll cover the Brooklyn Nets. Covered them for a year. Just so happens it's the right before they get Kevin Durant and Kyrie. And I'm like, man, this team is great. Like these guys get it done. So yeah, like at the point when they like it was probably about a month after they signed Kyrie and KD, and DeAndre, can't leave him out.
And Garrett Temple, don't forget.
Garrett Temple, David Nwaba, Wilson Chandler. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically after they signed all these guys, I got in contact. Well, I was actually at their media day. So when they really brought in those guys for the first times in their Brooklyn Nets jerseys, got to see KD come out there, walk out there in a Brooklyn Nets jersey. It was a crazy experience. I met the head of Nets Daily. We talked for a while, and then within about a month, started working there. Basically got brought in to do film stuff, and that's what I've been doing. So the more I get into this, the more I get into the film stuff. So now my stuff has gotten way, way, way technical. And that's kind of what my niche is. I think at the end of the day, that's kind of about That's what it's about in sports, is finding a niche. So I do that, and then of course I do the streaming stuff. Keith knows this better than anybody, and that's kind of where we're moving from there, is just film and streaming. I'm Keith. I'm finally going to be putting together YouTube stuff. I'm finally doing it.
Yo, hey, it's got to start somewhere. Like that's what I tell people about any of this stuff. You just got to pick a day, start doing it. Let me know if you need any help or you have any questions.
Dude, I might bother you all the time. I'm just letting you know,
because I know there's a lot to learn. I'm always still learning stuff, but once you get started, you'll get addicted to it, and you'll want to keep creating and keep going, and more people can find you. I'll say YouTube is great for discovery. You know, people can stumble upon your YouTube, and you could have a good amount of subscribers pretty quickly. So go for it.
Yep. So that's me, man. Basketball fan my whole life. Picked the Brooklyn Nets. Not necessarily a fan of them, but I'm a fan of their community. I like their players. So, you know, I'm not a die-hard Nets fan. I would never say that, because mostly I don't want to disrespect all the real deal Nets fans out there. I don't want to be some poser or something.
The Jersey
like that.
fans, but
yeah,
you're in Brooklyn.
Yeah, so that part was nice too. Like, I think that's part of the reason why, like, that this organization will always be special to me. You have to think about, I moved out here from California. I barely knew a soul. So the thing that I would do would be go to these Nets games. Sometimes I went with a friend. Sometimes I just went. I was like, these are $20. I'm going to go here, take notes, see if I can see things on the bench, include that in writing, and you know, just kind of, it's going to be special to me because it gave me the first, and this is super, super, super corny, but the first home away from home. So that's kind of, that's how I got here. And that's, you know, what the Nets mean to me, I guess.
Yeah, that's
New York
awesome.
City.
Yeah.
City that dreams are made of.
I remember Hudson and I, well, at least I know I followed you on Talkin Nets, and I think Hudson and I saw a couple of your like periscopes and your tweets and interacted with you on Twitter before you and I ever connected through Brian Egan from the Glue Guys. The like Nets online community, there's a few of us, but I feel like everyone's pretty much connected, and we all kind of cross paths, and it's only a matter of time before everyone is either at the Barclays Center at a game or, you know, at some type of event, whenever we can do those type of things again. But yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it'll be nice to be able to like see people. That'll be cool.
hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon, man. That's what I keep saying. But I'm not gonna lie. Like the Zoom conversations and the streaming and the stuff like that. Like, hey, it's not quite the same, but it is nice. Even if you're like, you know, you have somebody having a conversation with you on Twitter, or if it's in, you know, like a live stream, you have somebody in the comments. Like, we're making do with what we got, and I think that's kind of the best you can really say. So that's what it's about.
I say it's leveled the playing field, right?
Yeah.
Because we've seen now all of the ESPN broadcasters, we've seen these journalists in the same setups that we're in, zooming in from home with a mic set up, with a MacBook camera facing them. Like, it kind of leveled that playing field. So if you can do what you do in that platform, if you can do what you do in that aspect, it doesn't matter if you're backed by ESPN or Nets Daily or John Boy Media. It's just like, hey, if you're good, you're good, and people are going to come to you. People are going to follow you. So just do your thing. I don't know. We're in an interesting time. This whole year has been crazy. This whole NBA season has been crazy. When we started doing Talkin Nets going into, you know, October, you know, we were looking at the Nets. You were actually at the Nets, the like media day, the first like press conference that they had, where like we first saw KD in the jersey and Kyrie in the jersey. Yes Network live streamed it. And fast forward to where we are now, nobody knew, you know, what this year was going to look like. But I mean, we all figured it out. We're all still going. Can you guys give me, I guess, your overall thoughts of the NBA bubble, and I guess your overall thoughts of what this NBA season has turned into? I mean, honestly, for me, I'll lead off. The bubble has been great. I say on this podcast in 48 episodes, probably 40 out of 48, I've said the NBA leads and everyone else will follow. After the Yankee game last night, I left Fox 5 on, and they were talking about how the NBA is funding some kind of like treatment for coronavirus. Like, I caught it quickly on a Fox News.
A quick saliva treatment for coronavirus. It's like a partnership between the NBA and Yale.
That's what I'm talking about when I say the NBA leads and everyone else follows. The NBA has like that type of stuff going on. Either way. So that's what I feel about the NBA. And with the bubble, great. No other leagues have, well, the WNBA and NHL have done it, but the other major sports like MLB and NBA or NFL have chosen to not go into a bubble like the NBA, which puts them at risk. The NBA, they're able to have all the games, none of them canceled, no positive tests. It's been great. And I think for the most part, the playoffs that we're getting pretty much shaped up to be the way that they would be. Maybe outside of the Portland Trailblazers because Dame Time turned it up, turned it on. But I'm very happy with where we've landed now going into the playoffs August 17th versus going into the playoffs April 17th. I don't know the exact date. I'll pass it to you, Matt. Just give me your overall thoughts on the NBA season and the NBA bubble.
Yeah, I think it's been great. Like just what they've done with the finding a way to incentivize the bottom of the standings was huge. Like that was my biggest takeaway. Like how often do you see a 10 seed playing out of their minds? Like the Spurs didn't have the best year and they almost made it into the playoffs and were gunning. Like they were trying crazy stuff, playing DeMar DeRozan at the 4. They had this fun like Keldon Johnson, Derek White, DeJounte Murray lineup. I mean, they nailed that. And I think that I even saw people online complaining about the best team sitting players and all this stuff. I'm like, look, man, if you ever watched the end of an NBA season, like this is pretty tame compared to how teams are usually sitting, guys. I mean, these standings were pretty much set in stone because they're only doing 8 games. And we saw really competitive basketball, especially at the, at the very beginning. Those first couple of games, these guys were going all out. So I thought they did a great job. I thought they led the way in terms of health. I thought they were very tasteful. I mean, I thought they did a great job with the Black Lives Matter stuff too. I mean, they made that heard like right away. And I don't know, this league, like every time I feel like they can't impress me, like I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like NBA, I feel like they're already up here. They actually take it one little mini step higher. So I was so impressed, man.
Man, talk about perfect 10s across the board for the NBA. Me and Keith were doing this podcast before all of this was announced, and we were talking, what percentage do we think the season is starting? And I was a guy who was pessimistic, and I was thinking, I don't know, 25%, and I don't think we get through it. I just couldn't fathom the ability that the NBA was going to be able to have to come out and put on these games and put on, everything that has gone into, having the bubble exist and having players come down and having players not get sick and having to deal with the snitch hotline and, maybe people trying to bring girls in like me and Keith talked about. And they just took it all in stride. And it really shows what a sports league can be. And, for me and Keith, especially as fans of other sports leagues, especially as fans of Major League Baseball, it shows the difference between the top of the line, the best leadership you can have and some of the worst leadership you can have. And it shows that there isn't this standard of bad leadership. When you look across the leagues, you see the NHL, the NBA, or not the NBA, the NHL, the MLB, and all these leagues with bad commissioners and people who hate the ownership, and the NFL being called the no fun league and fines for marijuana and all these awful things. But the NBA has been able to come out and just show that it's possible to not be that, to not be these evil leaders. And I'm just so impressed. And for people who aren't fans of the NBA, who weren't fans of the NBA going into this, I think it showed them that, the NBA is showing the way forward. And like he said, the NBA leads and everyone follows. And I hope they do, because everyone should absolutely follow what the NBA did.
Let me add one thing. I also think we should give credit to the players, because the players bought in too. Like that, look, like you have all these protocols, but they're loose. Like, you could technically go out and go bring in a girl or from Instagram or whatever. But they haven't done that. Like they've committed to it and they played hard, man. Like they've come out and like approached this like it isn't a weird situation at all. I mean, you watch these games, you don't even notice that there's virtual fans. You don't notice that this is played on some random gym in Disney World. Like, they've done such a good job at showing up and doing their jobs and doing it with the absolute best approach possible. Like, I mean, the players deserve just as much, if not more, to me.
Yeah, I mean, the players, talk about just being professionals. They all kind of buckled down. We got the laughable Lou Will went to Magic City thing. We knew there was going to be one. We couldn't call that it was going to be a strip club, and the reason that he went there was for wings. But he quarantined for 10 days, and that time passed, and he was back on the court, and no one talked about it. I think the I think the NBA did a great job with the entire thing. Surprised me. I definitely didn't think it was going to go as smoothly as it did. with the players, with the protocol, with the, COVID-19 test, and with the national anthem. The way these guys all took a knee, united, but protesting the national anthem. Now, the NFL, I'm interested to see how they follow up, because the NBA kind of force-fed this thing. Like, hey, if you don't want to see players kneeling during the national anthem, don't watch. And then when you talk about not watching, I also compared NBA to MLB, because we're in the regular season for Major League Baseball right now. And with COVID, some games have been canceled. Some teams have been wiped out for 17 days. And the full slate of baseball games don't always start at 1 o'clock like they usually do. With the NBA, every day you turned on your TV during these seeding games are starting by 1:30, and you get a full slate of games from 1:30 till midnight. And that, it's such a rare thing, but it was so entertaining and so well done. I'm happy that we were covering it. I'm happy that I'm alive to see it. I'm actually leaning towards them starting next season in a bubble. Maybe it's the first half. Maybe it's the first half starts in a bubble. I was watching on the virtual feed, or the virtual fan feed. I didn't see anywhere else what the other side of the court looked like that the virtual fans weren't on. And I think there was a challenge and a review, and I saw what it looked like. It's just black. These players are playing on a court where maybe to their right is just weird. Black with a photographer or a couple of people that are working in there. And then the left is just a screen of digital fans. And these guys are hooping. And I think it also changed some guys. Like we said, TJ Warren, he's a guy that he was scoring 18 points a game, and he elevated to 33 points a game. Maybe he's a practice guy. Maybe the environment was better. We talk about Jared Allen on our own team. Something changed with Jared Allen in the quarantine. And then also on the court, maybe he's hitting his free throws because they're not, throwing those McDonald's fake fries together above their heads to distract him. Something is different about it. I'm cool with it. I love the whole NBA packaging and experience. I hope that there's some behind the scenes footage of the bubble, of the day in the life in the bubble. I know there's some guys that vlogged it, but I want to see the NBA produced version of it. I hope we get something like that after the season.
I mean, they haven't messed up yet. Why would they mess that up now? That's what I'm saying. Imagine the 30 for 30 that could come out in, a year, 2 years. That would be one of the best. If they could produce it right and put it all together right, and they have the right amount of footage, the amount of, good basketball that they could show, but also the personal side and all the, the hijinks of, people within the bubble. I mean, the production value is through the roof, and there's no reason that the NBA wouldn't hit it out of the park again like they have all these times before.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we will get into the Toronto Raptors playoff preview, Talkin Nets, episode 48. Obviously, don't touch that dial. This is a podcast. We'll be right back. Okay, right back at it. Your Brooklyn Nets, the number 7 seed, will be facing the team from the north, the number 2 Toronto Raptors, in round 1 of the 2020 NBA playoffs. Hooray. Now, the Raptors are 0-2 versus the Nets in the playoffs in history. The 7th seed has beat the number 2 seed 5 times in the last 10 years, with San Antonio beating Dallas 4-2 in 2010. Maybe there'll be something in the air 10 years later. Maybe the Brooklyn Nets can do it. I don't know. I'm realistic, but I'm one of those that likes to say, hey, we saw a lot of people bet against the Brooklyn Nets in the bubble. We saw them beat spreads every week, beat the odds every week. They were laughed at when this team got put together. They were underestimated the whole way through. Why can't they challenge the Raptors? Why can't they possibly knock these guys off? Now, in the regular season, we also played pretty tough against these guys. We lost to the Raptors 3 times, but we beat them the last time. The first time we lost 110-102. That was December 14th. Way different team. We also lost to them on the 4th of January, 4 days into this year, 121-102. That wasn't as close as the first one. Then we lost by 1 point. I know you guys probably remember that game, 119-118 on February 8th. And then we beat the Raptors 101-91. 4 days later, when Karras was starting to be Karras. And yeah, here we are. We're going to meet these guys again. And, we've seen them. We're familiar with them. They're in our division. What are you guys thinking about our chances against the team from the North?
It's going to be an interesting battle because it's like I was just kind of like, I've been writing and just sort of thinking about this Nets team. And I think the ideal version of the Nets is maybe like 7-8 players playing. I think like some of the Lance Thomases, the Dante Halls probably shouldn't see too much time on the floor if you're going to really, really try to gun and win this thing. So you're looking at probably like a 7 to 8 man rotation in round one, which you don't always see. The Raptors are like the complete opposite. I mean, I feel like everybody on that team is long and if not long, athletic. It's a really interesting clash of identities where the Nets are clearly led by a star level player in Karis LeVert, whereas the Raptors are just a little bit more evenly spread. Yes, they have, Kyle Lowry, who is, some people, the opinions on him vary. I think he's really good and is like a top 30, 35 player. Pascal Siakam, who's definitely a top 30 player, but they're more evenly spread. So I think from that perspective, it's a really interesting battle of philosophies and just team makeup.
Definitely. And there's a lot of stats and numbers you can look at, but I mean, that's more Matt's area than mine. But there's one that I'll focus on, and it's that the Raptors are worst in their half-court offense. Like all the stats that make that up, their half-court offense is statistically the worst in the NBA. And I think this game is going to come down a lot to defense because this Raptors team plays phenomenal defense. Like Matt said, they're all long, and if they're not long, they're Kyle Lowry and are ridiculously athletic. So they'll be able to stop a lot of this Nets offense. So the Nets are going to have to be able to manufacture stops on their end if they want to stay in these games. And I think it's going to be important to not let the Raptors run, because when they start running, it gets dangerous, because the Nets have been very vulnerable in the past to big guys who can step outside and hit shots, which Pascal Siakam is obviously at the top of that list, but you have many other players who can do that on this team as well. And I think it's important that the Nets are going to be able to play hard and to take advantage of the fact that the Raptors aren't going to have a crowd to feed off of. I think, even going back to 2013, 2014, which was the last time the Nets played the Raptors, their president came straight out and said, F the Nets. And that fired up their fans, and the Nets actually won that series. Big upset there. So I think they're going to be missing a lot of that energy that they normally bring. If you watch the playoffs all of last year, I mean, the energy that their fans brought them and that it gave this team was unmatched. There was no better environment, I think, for a home NBA game. It reminded me a lot of watching games in, Coalfield House or some other places like that in college basketball. So I think that's going to be something that the Nets need to play off of. But if I'm being completely honest, the way that the Nets have a route to, first being competitive, but then, if we're looking, a little more fantastically winning the series, is they need a couple things to happen. For me, they need the 3-point shooting to come down. I think it needs to continue. Joe Harris needs to continue shooting the lights out while moving off ball the way he does. We're going to need some other people to step up. They're going to dare Karras to shoot the three. He was something like 25% from three, which is below his career average, but he needs to figure it out, because they're going to be, playing him off. They're going to be going under screens, and they're going to be daring him to shoot threes, because once he's in the mid-range, he's shooting ridiculously. And once he's slashing, he's shooting ridiculously. And if he's running the pick and roll, he usually has options to find if he's not going to shoot. So that is, I think, my biggest key for this series, because if he can find that stroke from three, he becomes a three-level player that is essentially going to be, impossible, if not hard to stop. I mean, obviously they can do a box and one like they're known to do, but they probably won't, considering it's Karis LeVert and he doesn't have the name recognition to, make an emotional decision to go to a box and one. So if he can hit those threes, I think the Nets can bring it to 6 or 7 games and have a fighting chance in this series.
Yeah, man, I'm still mad that Karras had to shoot the three for the win against the Blazers. I was like, fuck. I'm like, that wasn't it. But I mean, he can hit that shot, but I'm like, that's not the shot. Like, Nets fans, we've had a lot of games come down to Karras, Spencer, Kyrie shooting that last shot, and we're like, I don't know if that's it. But back to the Raptors. We beat the Raptors because Drake can't come to the bubble. It's that simple. There's no Drake. So no Drake, we're good. Like, no Drake on the court. You know, he talks shit to all the players. He hangs out with the players. Drake just dropped a video with Kevin Durant in it. No Drake, I think our chances are up. But no, and in reality, that whole We the North, the outside atmosphere in Toronto, even inside their place, what's it, Scotiabank Arena?
Yep.
Like, they have a rare home court advantage. And it's not in America. Like, you literally have to go. Just the fact that you have to, like, go through customs going there, like that is going to change things. It's a level playing field. And, you know, we've spoken about it a lot. Some guys are playing better in Orlando. You know, the hoop is supposedly wider. Like, the shooters in the bubble are seeing the hoop better. I hope that, like, this level playing field does level some things out for us with the Raptors. Now, we also can't speak on the Raptors without mentioning Kawhi Leonard. Now, I know Kawhi isn't their whole team. I know that they were competitive this year. Would they win like 53 games this year or something like that?
They had like a 760 winning percentage, which I believe was their highest in franchise history.
Yeah, Nick Nurse is a good coach. He coaches these guys tough. He coaches them hard. They play hard. And let's not hate on what they did in the bubble. Like, these guys only lost one game in the bubble to the Celtics, which, you know, like, these guys won every other game, I think, in the bubble. I think there weren't that many teams with a better record than the Nets in the bubble. The Raptors were one of them. They played tough against LeBron. They played tough. Like, you got to give them respect. They beat the Heat in the bubble. They beat the Bucks in the bubble. And I know there were some games where guys weren't playing, but this is a legit number 2 team without Kawhi Leonard, and a legit threat to not just beat the Nets, but go ahead and make some noise. So if we are supposed to come into this series, and I think I put on Talkin Sports, I said, I think I'm going to go Raptors in 6. I think we can force them to 6 games, but let's dream a little bit. You know, what do we think the Nets need to do to match up with these guys? Let's talk about overall matchups, guards, centers, wings. Like, what do we need to see from the Nets to actually go toe-to-toe and win these games? Like Hudson said, right, they're going to dare Karras to shoot the 3. Yeah, we're going to need Karras to be on shooting, but we're going to need other guys to be able to shoot too. We need Joe Harris to be ready early. You know, we need guys that are going to get minutes that haven't got minutes well, they didn't get minutes in the regular season with us. This is going to be their first time really matching up with the Raptors. Like, we need these guys to play tough. So what do you guys thinking the keys are from some of our other position players, from some of our other guys that we're going to need to see to compete with the Raptors and potentially beat the Raptors?
I think Hudson nailed it with the threes. Like, the threes are going to be the ultimate equalizer, because as Hudson also made a great point of, the half court offense is the thing that the Raptors don't quite have. That's the one place you can tell they don't necessarily. They're down a superstar after last summer's event. So I think the threes are going to be the great equalizer. So you need to continue to have huge production from guys like TLC, Tyler Johnson, Chris Chiozza, who's been good off the catch, not off dribbles, but he's been good off the catch. All these guys that have been getting hot at different points, Rodions Kurucs, that needs to happen. I was admittedly like a little worried about the Karis LeVert thing, just with what that's going to look like if they go under screens. I thought about it more and more, and he's one of those guys, he's so quick that if you go under a screen, it actually weirdly enough gives him more of a runway to get into his first step and really get moving. And he's just so good at changing his direction and pulling up off, a couple of dribbles in that, painted area, mid-range type of shot. So I'm a little bit less worried about him. Actually, the guy that I'm kind of fixated on right now is what it looks like for Joe Harris. Because let's be honest, he's the Nets second option right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that looks like extrapolated over a 7-game series. And I know he's improved he's just taking mid-range shots now, which is huge for him. He's gotten better at being, a finisher around the basket. But they are going to make life for him really, really hard. Really, really, really hard. I think they are going to mirror him and switch and run zones to just try to keep him out of his rhythm at pretty much all points of the season. Of the series. So that's what I'm curious about, is what that looks like for them on offense. Defensively, I just want to know who's guarding Siakam. Like,
Yeah.
are we going to get a reliable Rodions Kurucs? Is he going to foul 3 times in the first quarter? They need him to be sharp. So I think that those two guys, Joe Harris on offense, Kurucs on defense, are the guys I'm really, really watching for right now.
Yeah, and I have to agree, especially with your point on Rodions Kurucs. You know, he's a couple of things. He is long, he is pretty athletic, but he is liable to foul. But on the other hand, he's liable to get under someone's skin. So I think there's ways where that matchup goes positively for him. I mean, as positively as it can go against, a top 30 NBA player, or it goes negatively. And I think if it goes negatively, we need TLC, because I think he's the second option when it comes to defending Siakam. We need TLC to come in and not foul out in 2 quarters. We need him to not just foul immediately, because when TLC doesn't do that, you see 2 TLC games, right? You have the TLC from the games where he's not starting, excluding that last game, where he comes in, he fouls, he misses his threes. Or you have the TLC from the games where he's starting, that 17 points in the first quarter type TLC, where he comes in and he's a shooter and he can hit those shots. He needs to be that if Rodions Kurucs goes down immediately. And honestly, if the Nets are going to get farther to a game 6, he needs to be that constantly, because if he's not, then it's going to be tough. And talking about players who aren't necessarily the ones that you focus on needing to be on, they're going to focus on Caris LeVert, they're going to focus on Joe Harris, they're going to focus on Jarrett Allen. So you're going to be left with 2 players in my mind that stick out immediately: Garrett Temple and Tyler Johnson. We've seen the GT 0 for 12 type 3-point games, but we've also seen him hit big shots in big moments to get the team back under wraps. Same with Tyler Johnson. You've seen him miss threes. You've seen him have that beautiful stroke. If those players can stay open because of the amount of focus that the Raptors have to put and are going to put on Joe Harris and Caris LeVert, then it becomes a completely different game. Matt said the 3 is the great equalizer. It absolutely is. And I stand by my comparison, with the Nets to a 12 seed in the NCAA tournament, to a Loyola Chicago. When you see these teams go deep, it's because they're shooting the 3. And because in any game on any night, the 3-point shot allows any team to win any game. And the Nets can do that. They can shoot high percentage. I mean, I think in the first quarter we set a Nets record. I think we shot 81% from the field. And if we can do that, and obviously maybe not shoot 81%, but shoot 60% like we did in the Bucks game, and extrapolate that across a series or even just a couple of games, it becomes more and more likely that the Nets are able to steal it if that Nets team shows up. But if the Nets team that fouls and gets bullied by Siakam and has issues with any of their bigs stepping out and shooting, because Jarrett Allen can't necessarily defend out there as well as he wants to be able to, then you're going to have a series that ends quickly. So I think that's really the big dichotomy that you can have with the Nets: the shooting or the fouls, and whichever one shows up is going to be what determines how far the Nets go.
Well, like if you're looking at the bubble Nets, these guys are going to shoot. In the last few games, we've seen them no fear from 3, like just chucking up threes and them actually landing and hitting. And that's why I said, I'm like, it's Caris, it's Joe. We need Joe early. We can't wait for Joe to turn it on late. We need Joe early. And if Joe doesn't have it early, I'm looking at a guy like TLC. TLC, stay aggressive, stay attacking, shoot your shot, keep the fouls down. Yes, we talk about his fouls a lot because he's got a high motor. He's running into guys. He's getting some chippy, like little, BS fouls, but we're going to need him to be smart in this series. Just looking at the matchup of rosters, right? You're looking at names when, you look at these guys, this is a championship team. These guys have rings. Like these guys, you're looking at a bunch of guys that won it last year versus a bunch of guys with nothing to lose, a bunch of guys that didn't know they'd be here, a bunch of guys that have been kind of put together randomly. And there's a factor there. There's this like Cinderella factor that we've talked about on the podcast. It's like a March Madness feel. Go shock the world. 12 seed versus a 5 seed, right? Everybody thinks this 5 seed from the power conference is going to just come in and do what they did. Like, no, this 12 seed is scrappy. They've got nothing to lose. These guys want to match up against the big dogs. They want to knock off the defending champs. I think that if there's a little bit of a sense of like, yo, these guys are matching up, they're playing tough with us, they're playing hard, you might see Kyle Lowry and company take their foot off the gas a little bit. They do have that chip on their shoulder of wanting to prove that Kawhi isn't the reason that they got there, that they got to the top of the mountain and won it. But he was a big part of the equation. Like, you can't take that. Like, he makes a shot against the Sixers that sends them to the next round. Like, that's Kawhi making that shot, making that play happen. What I'm saying is, it's going to be a tale of two teams for the Raptors. We know what kind of Nets we're going to get. The bubble Nets, the scrappy Nets. It's going to be, are the Raptors really set on proving to the world that they belong and they're trying to get back to another championship? Or are the Raptors going to just be content with the fact that they do have really nice, shiny rings and they did win it last year and last year was their year, and not really go too hard and maybe let the Nets sneak up and steal a couple games? Because depending on how the series goes, like, it's not the series that we've seen in the past where it's like, okay, now they've got to go back to Brooklyn and defend. No, they're playing in the same court, the same spot. They're going to be in the same hotels. I don't know. There's a dynamic there that I think this could be a series.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I'm just the chip on the shoulder that you mentioned. Like, I think that if the Nets are going to win, it would have to be because the opponent just didn't take them seriously or something like that. And they came in with that chip on their shoulder. The thing about the Nets is, like, not only are they fighting for their pride and stuff like that, a lot of these guys, I don't know if you could tell me one guy on the roster who we know is coming back next year. Like, every single one of these guys is fighting for their jobs, coach included. So that plays into it. I wish they were actually playing Milwaukee, just because I don't know, something about Toronto and them having to show the world. I mean, they've been, people have been saying disparaging things about them since preseason, since, Kawhi left, being like, oh, these guys aren't going to defend the title. It's going to be a wash. They're the one team maybe that, like the Nets, they're going out, they're trying to prove something every single night. So in a way, I almost wonder if that Bucks match had been a little bit better. I know the Giannis factor is something the Nets have no idea how to contain, although they did well in the bubble game where they played a lot of zone. But I think the way to do it would just be, again, the threes. You're not taking us seriously. You're not taking us for real. Like, we have a guy who's probably a top 40 guy right now, maybe even better, in Karis LeVert. And we got a coach who might be one of the best young minds in the league. I mean, he looks amazing, Jacques Vaughn. So I think that's what it had to be. But they're going to need to play damn near perfect.
I agree completely. And the one thing I'll say, to close out everything that I've said so far, is there's one area where the March Madness 12 seed comparison that me and Keith love so much fails. March Madness is a single elimination tournament. It's one game, you win, you're on. UMBC beat Virginia because UMBC shot like 100% from three. The Nets can shoot 100% from three and win a game. The Raptors have been known to lose game ones. So the Nets can take game one. They can punch him in the mouth. They can say, oh, you're not going to take us seriously? And Karis can drop 50 on him. That can happen on any given night. But the odds of it happening more than once are slim. And to win a 7-game series, you really have to be the better team, or you have to show something special, or the other team has to not believe that you are anything. And the Nets can do that. They can go out, they can shock the world in game one, they can shock the world in game two, tie the series, do anything like that. But this Raptors team, to me, feels like Matt said, one of the teams that I wouldn't have wanted to face, because they're a team that has, one of the chips on their shoulder that is comparable to the Nets chip on their shoulder. If you look across the span of the league, there's not too many teams that have that kind of a chip on their shoulder. And that is the kind of energy that can take down a giant. But when the Raptors have such a large chip on their shoulder too, you run into the problem where, whose chip is bigger, right? Obviously, the Nets want it real bad. The Nets are playing for their future. Every single person on that team. And when you said that, I actually thought, I was like, Karis? No. Joe Harris? No, he's going to be a free agent. Jared Allen? Probably going to trade him, maybe. Who knows? And I was just thinking to myself, if the Nets are going to do this, if the Nets are even going to take them to 6, they need to, night in, night out, just take advantage of the fact that they're in the bubble and that they can rain these threes and just block out the noise and hope against hope that their shots fall. Because, once an open shot leaves your hand, there's only so much you can do other than hope that it goes down. And I think the Nets can hope themselves into a game 6, but if I'm being realistic, I think that's where it caps off.
It's tricky, and I don't want to cut in here too much, but the one thing I will say to that is yes, I think the other thing that's so tricky about this matchup is even if they do come out firing, maybe they win the first 2 games, they're going against the best adjuster in the league in Nick Nurse. He is a mastermind. We've given Jacques Vaughn props, I'm sure we all have, for the things that he's done game to game. This guy's changing things minute to minute. I mean, he is a mad chemist in there. He really is. So that part, I think, is also really tough to account for because he's going to throw a lot of different things at the Nets, both defensively and offensively.
So Nick Nurse versus Jacques Vaughn. What does Jacques Vaughn have to do? That's something we've asked. What does Jacques Vaughn have to do for everyone to say this is the head coach of the Nets? So I'll throw the question out to you guys. If Jacques Vaughn wins 1 game against the Raptors, does that help his case? Does that say, hey, this guy's it? Or does he have to win the whole first round? Does he have to win the whole series?
You know what? Let me say this. I don't know if there's a number that he has to win. I think that if there's another guy coming in there, that guy's been in place since June. Honestly. I mean, and that sounds disparaging to Jacques Vaughn, who's been awesome, but I don't know. I mean, these guys are very calculated. We know that Marks things, keeps things under wraps. The whole thing about KD saying that, we haven't really talked about any of that stuff. I don't believe that for a second. I think these guys have been in cahoots since February? How early do you want to go? I'm sure they've had certain guys picked out really since they decided to move on from Kenny Atkinson. So, I think if he gets a shot and he, if he really has an honest shot at this, I think it'll help. But, there's only so much he can do if there's somebody that they already have in mind.
Yeah, here's what I think for Jacques Vaughn. I think he is the biggest and most unexpected wrench thrown into the mind of Sean Marks right now for Jacques Vaughn. I think, like Matt said, they had a plan. They knew something was in place, whether it be Ty Lue or Mark Jackson or whoever. They were like, okay, these are our 3 candidates. If 2 of them say no, 1 of them is going to say yes, whatever. And we're happy with all of them. But now Jacques Vaughn has entered the scene and shown that he is not just a lame duck head coach. And he has made problems for Sean Marks. And I think when Sean Marks went out and said, we're going to have a full head coaching search and we're going to consider Jacques, I think he was being completely honest. I think at that point, because there are some decisions to make. And I think that there's one side of me that says there's nothing that Jacques Vaughn can do because the test is going to be is how is the coach going to mesh with KD and Kyrie? And there's no way for him to know how they're going to mesh with KD and Kyrie because he never coached them when they played in games. I mean, obviously he was an assistant, so he coached Kyrie a little bit, but they're never going to know to the level that you would know about a Ty Lue or a Mark Jackson or someone like that. But the other part of me is that Sean Marks is the ultimate utilitarian when it comes to signing people. You see him sign just the most random people and have them turn into serviceable and above serviceable NBA players. Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie, both second-round picks. TLC was a first-round pick, but he was a bust. All of these players were out of nowhere, not glamorous names, not whatever. And Sean Marks made them into something. So my other mind says Sean Marks sees, Jacques Vaughn as his most recent success, his next reclamation success. And I think if that side comes to play, I think the Nets have him as their head coach. And I think, even just ego-wise, it would almost feel like something that Sean Marks would want to do just because, everyone likes it when they're right. Everyone likes it when they can create a winner in-house. So I think that's what's important to watch. But other than that, I think there's a chance that Jacques maybe never had a chance.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people running with the narrative of these head coaches that win it in their first year. We're going against Nick Nurse. We saw what they did in Toronto. I'm pretty sure that's the same thing that went down with Steve Kerr and the Warriors. So there's a lot of people saying, hey, the culture of the NBA, the way things go in the NBA, you fire that coach that got you there and you put a new guy in the seat and he's the one that drives the team to the championship. So maybe that'll happen. But I mean, I'd like to see Jacques Vaughn, man. The last thing I'll say about it is like, it seems like the Nets want to go get the like hottest girl. And it's like, yo, don't go after the hottest girl in school, because like, if you got a pretty good looking girl that holds it down, I don't know, she cooks, she minds her business, she really likes you, she's faithful, and then you kick her to the curb to go get that super hot girl that's got 1,000 likes on her photo, she's got the tits, she's got the ass, they think she's the hottest shit ever, and then when you get around her, you're like, this bitch is crazy. She snores. You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't want to see the Nets go chase the hottest girl in school because they have to make that like splash hire. When you got someone right there that's doing the job, has been in the locker room, that's got the respect from people. No, it might not be the flashiest, shiny candidate, but is definitely doing the job. Definitely made something out of nothing. And I've said it a bunch of times: beat Kawhi, beat Giannis, beat LeBron. Like, we'll see what happens. All right, let's tie this together. Let's wrap this up. Who wins the series and in how many games? I'm going to say Toronto wins the series. I'm going to stick with my picks from Talking Sports and what I already said. So Toronto wins the series in 6. Toronto in 6. I think the Nets will get 2 games. I think we'll figure out how to take 2 games. But ultimately, those 4 wins will go to Toronto, and they'll get us out of there. Raps take it in 6.
I got him. Well, it's in writing, so I can't go against my written word. So I'm bound to saying Raps in 5. I like the idea of the game 1 curse. I think that's hilarious. I hope that happens again. It's at Toronto. Yeah. Everybody freaks out. That maybe they come out a little flat. The Nets have they've been impressive at like pretty much every point except for that first game against the Magic. So I have Raps in 5. I just think top to bottom they're just a better team. And they have so many more counters to throw out there. I think that's so important in playoffs when you see the same opponent up to 7 times. Having counters and having things to throw at the other team is important. The Nets all they can really do is shoot threes and hope that Karis LeVert goes off and play hopefully decent defense. But even on that side of the ball, I think they're limited. So yes, I do think the Raptors are going to beat the undersized, understudy Nets in 5.
Here's what I'm going to say, and I'm a little conflicted because I don't think the Raptors are going to sweep the Nets. I love the game 1 curse. I also love the bubble, and I don't think anyone's really sweeping anybody in the bubble, just given the way everything has gone so far. But I don't want to say 5 games or 6 games because that's bad podcasting. So I'm going to say 7 because I went last, and you know what? It is the bubble, and no one knows what's going to happen. We've never been there. We can look at stats all day or whatever. It doesn't matter. We're in the bubble. Who knows? And the Nets have kind of leaned really heavily into that who knows, throughout this time in the bubble, even throughout this season, just being kind of a fun, weird, scrappy team while we wait for Kevin Durant to become the beast that he is again. So why not Nets in 7?
Yeah, someone hit me up and they're like, Keith, I know you're a Nets fan. Give me your honest opinion. Like, what are the Nets going to do against the Raptors? And I said, not get swept. I don't think we're getting swept. Last year, we won that first game against Philly in the playoffs, and the Nets fans started pumping their chests out. Man. We were all feeling ourselves. Then we got swept. Then we lost 4 in a row. But I don't think we get swept. I think we figure out a way to, compete. So let's see here. Now, wrapping this up again, I just have a question for you guys. Who you guys think is going to be, like, if you had to pick one guy to be player of the series for the Nets or for the Raptors or both, let us know who that player would be.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I guess I'm supposed to go first. I'm going Rondé Hollis Jefferson. Just kidding. Shout out to our old friend Rondé now with the Raps. I think if the Nets are going to do this, I really think Jared Allen has to assert himself and be a beast. I think he's got to be a monster. I think he needs to put the whole league on notice, and he's a changed man. He's done some things in the bubble better. But if the Nets are to come away and steal the series, I think Jared Allen's going to have a hell of a series. On the Raptors, any of those guys, man. It could be Fred. And, we gotta point out that Fred and Chioza got some comparisons. They're different players.
They shouldn't get them.
Yeah, but when Chioza first came on the scene, a bunch of people were like, he's like Fred VanVleet. I think he can be a top player for them in this series. Kyle Lowry, Spicy P. Who knows? If I had to put a guy on the Raptors to carry him through, I'm going to say Kyle Lowry. So Jared Allen from the Nets, Kyle Lowry from the Raptors.
For the Nets, I like the Jared Allen one. I think Jared's a good one because he's got to figure out he's been better actually defending the perimeter, but they have 4 bigs that can shoot threes in Boucher, Ibaka, Gasol, and Siakam. So I think that's a big assignment for him, is defending the perimeter well. For the Nets, I mean, this is boring. I'm going to take Karis LeVert. I've done so many things and worry about what happens if they go under screens. I don't know. I think that he's surprised me every step of the way. It's not that I've been lower on Karis LeVert, but I just haven't always seen what it looks like for him to be a star level player. And he's proved to me how it looks. And it's an unorthodox, old school style of just star player. So for me, I think he's going to have to just be absolutely exceptional, best player in the series if they're going to win. So with that thinking, of course, I have to pick him for the Nets guy because I think he'll make or break this series. For the Raptors, I'm surprised. I looked this up just now that Fred VanVleet is actually leading them in scoring. I think Fred VanVleet has a really good opportunity. I think that the Nets will probably put Garrett Temple on Lowry or sort of put him on VanVleet and Lowry and have whoever the second point guard is, whether it be Chioza or Tyler Johnson to cover, I guess, because they run basically 2 point guards together. But I like Fred VanVleet, man. He's ballsy. He's just I don't know. I think he just is the personification of why that organization just likes to stick it to you. So, Lowry does it in different ways with the charges, but that VanVleet is a spark plug. So I think that's my pick right now.
I mean, I would love for Chioza to play like him.
He's got to become a better defender. That's it, man. VanVleet can defend.
Yeah,
that was his calling card.
He's a dog.
So
go for it.
I'm gonna mix it up. I'm not going your top flight names like you guys gave. I'm gonna say for the Nets, Rodions Kurucs.
Nice.
If he can be, Rodions from last year, and he can defend and not foul out against Serge Ibaka, he can assert himself as first off a player on this team next year, but also like a piece for the future, like something that people need to actually look out for, because we've seen flashes of that ability. Obviously, we saw it last year, but even this year in the bubble, we've seen him hit some clutch rainbow threes, and we've seen him just play well and play hard overall. So I think he is someone that is, a lot of the Nets' success, that may or may not happen, I think turns on whether he can put together a good performance. Man, and for the Raptors, it's tough because, like you guys have said, they're such a balanced team. Obviously, Spicy P is going to be Spicy P, but I think it's going to be someone off the bench. I think it's going to be Serge Ibaka, because first off, I like Serge Ibaka. He's fun. I love his show on his Bleacher Report show where he cooks the food. Very fun for him. Very fun. But also, he is someone that can absolutely drive the Nets insane. Obviously, if he plays, he was hurt, I believe, on Friday. But if he plays, he can come off the bench and just absolutely bully whoever the Nets try to throw out to defend him on their second unit, because obviously he can step out and hit threes, and he can play on the inside. And if he does both of that, the Nets really don't have anyone who can match up with him on their second unit, like, whatsoever.
All right. And I guess last but not least, like, what are you guys most looking forward to? Not just with the Nets. It doesn't have to just be with the Nets, but the entire playoffs that we're about to get into. This is a rare, maybe once in a lifetime NBA playoffs we're about to see. I'm excited just for the Nets to be in the playoffs and get that national spotlight again. Like we felt a couple nights ago playing against the Trailblazers. I'm like, everybody's on Twitter talking about the Nets. Like, it's not just Nets Twitter, it's everyone talking about Karis LeVert. So I guess what I'm most looking forward to is the Nets getting that national spotlight, and just the NBA to get the national spotlight for everyone, and for us to get to see these players play for real. Like, no resting, everyone going for it, like full on LeBron, full on Harden. I can't wait to see that OKC versus Houston series. Like, I'm just ready for the playoffs to be, what people are talking about. Baseball is great. Don't get me wrong. I love MLB, but for these next couple weeks, there's going to be a different energy in the NBA, and I think it's going to captivate a lot of people. So excited to see that.
Yeah, I live for NBA playoffs. And my honest answer to that is just having basketball like around the clock is so nice, and it's continuing in the playoffs. I didn't realize they'd be doing games at like 1:30 and then 4 and then 9, or whatever they're scheduling right now. That part is really nice. In terms of this series, my not so serious answer, although it's kind of serious, is the clash of Nets Twitter and Raptors Twitter. I've never really interacted with Raptors Twitter until this weekend. I like them. They're feisty, man. Like,
Canada.
They're feisty. They got a whole nation behind them. Like, they got a whole country behind them. So I think that part is so fun. It's going to be really nice. It just feeling like we're actually back in the swing of things, having people go at each other on Twitter, having the basketball. I mean, it's been meaningful already, but there's nothing like it. I think every sport has got, its postseason ironed out to a different way. And basketball is just, it's a game. It's like a game of chess. It's all about what the opponent's going to do this next game. And that part is so fun to cover and watch even just from night to night. So, you can't meet it. I mean, baseball has got the cinematic, everything behind that. And then football, of course, has got that one game playoff. Everything's on the line. But basketball has got a game of counters. It's a very interesting thing that I feel like people, when you first start watching basketball, you don't realize how much that is what the NBA playoffs is. So I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. And something we talked about before coming on the podcast here, I am so goddamn bored. I have to stay in my room all day. Like, I'm trapped in my room on the Fordham campus. I can't do anything all day. There's no students here. And even if there were, I wouldn't be allowed to see them. So I'm just happy to have something I can watch and do and cover because, oh my God, is it boring to just sit.
You're on house arrest.
Literally,
Man,
I'm on house arrest.
so
I'm on house
now.
arrest in like a 3x5. This is ridiculous. So shout out to the NBA bubble for providing me with something to do.
Awesome. All right, fellas. Well, let's wrap this.
Free Hudson.
We need some voicemails. I would love to do a voicemail ep. We're going to do another ep after the first 2 games. We have some voicemails that I didn't add to this pod, but we'll add them on the next one. So if you're listening to this pod and you want to be on the playoff pod when we talk about the first 2 playoff games, call the voicemail line. It's 201-870-0461. Apologies to the guys that called on the voicemail over the weekend. This isn't a voicemail pod, but you'll get on the next one. Also, make sure you follow us on social media at Talkin Nets on Instagram and Twitter. Also, follow John Boy Media on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me at Keith McPherson. You guys give your handles. Let them know where they can follow you.
At Matt Brooks NBA. Everything's there. The streams, the podcasts, although I don't really do too many podcasts on my own. The articles, all that stuff is there. So that's where you can find me.
And you can find me at Hudson Flynn _. Not much there, going to be completely honest. But I retweet the podcast, so you guys can follow me for secondary information on the podcast.
Yeah, Hudson made his account, I think, around the beginning of the start of this NBA season. So he hasn't been out there too long, but he's made way pretty fast. He's got his followers up pretty quickly, and he does a lot of the tweets coming from Talkin Nets because I'm always doing a bunch of different things for John Boy Media and in the baseball world. But make sure you subscribe to the pod. If you like this pod, tell a friend to tell a friend. Matt Brooks NBA was on the pod. Leave a rating, leave a review, 5 stars, say something nice about one of us. And we'll see you after. Yeah, or don't. I mean, we actually someone wrote a bad review and it was like the best thing for the pod. We talked about that and then it prompted some good reviews. So maybe leave a nasty review and then we'll read it on the pod. And then the people that like us will be like, let's help these guys out. What else we got? I think that's it. So yeah, the plan is after the first 2 games, game 1 and game 2, we'll record. And I think we'll have another pod out on Thursday. And then after games 3 and 4, we'll have another pod out next Monday. That's all we got. We'll see you after that. Hopefully we got some good stuff to talk about on the next pod, and Nets Twitter is feeling what the Brooklyn Nets do. And we sign off one way. Every time we sign off, I say, let's go Nets, Brooklyn.